like the majority are in.
Oh,
So
good.
I want to welcome everyone today. My name is Therese Lane. I am in the marketing group for Riverwoods, and I am joined today by Bill Weidacher, and he's going to provide a New Hampshire real estate update. By the numbers of you that are attending today, we can tell that this is still a very important topic for everyone. We have had a very trusted source with Bill Weidacher. We've worked with him for many, many years and love to reach out to him to be able to provide this important information for everyone looking to find out what the latest real estate information is in your area, and he may cover a little bit in New England as well. So what I first want to do is, as you all know, just a few housekeeping items. You are all on mute, but we really welcome your questions at the end of Bill's presentation. So we have built time into this hour-long session to cover your questions. Bill wants to hear from you with all the specific questions that are on your mind. So we'll go through those at the end. You will use the Q&A area for your questions. And we do really value your input for any upcoming topics you would like us to cover. We've received great feedback in the past and have acted on that feedback with different topics that are important to you. So please send those ideas our way. And any questions on improving this format, this Zoom webinar format, we would love to hear that as well. So I just want to cover now really a CCRC. Many of you may be familiar with what a life care community is, or the acronym CCRC, Continuing Care Retirement Community. But there may be some of you joining today that are new to this concept. So I'm going to briefly cover what a CCRC is. It is an insurance product. And when we say it's an insurance product, we mean that you'll move into your independent apartment, and you will be ensuring that when you need health care down the road, you will not pay market rate for that care. So whether that care that you may need down the road, whether that is assisted living, nursing care, or memory support, you have the insurance built in that you will not pay market rate for that care. So we do report up to the New Hampshire Board of Insurance, and we do provide our financial information to that organization, New Hampshire Insurance, each year. And essentially, when residents move into a CCRC, they are prepaying for what their future health care needs may be. So with that, the government does acknowledge when you're in a life care community, it acknowledges that the entrance fee that you will pay when you move in and your monthly service fee, that those are both prepaying for what your future healthcare needs may be. So because of that, a portion of the entrance fee and the monthly service fee are eligible to be tax deductible based on your specific tax situation. So our finance team drafts a very detailed letter each January that our residents are able to share with their accountant when they do their taxes. So with a CCRC, it is a smart financial decision because you are coming into a community and you will have certainty and predictability that no matter what changes may occur in your health in the future, that you will know how much you will be paying each month. And there is significant asset preservation because with the entrance fee, those are highly refundable entrance fees when you come into the communities. So not only is it a smart financial decision, and one of the most important things, it provides peace of mind because you know where the care is coming from. But it is a wonderful lifestyle choice. Many residents are very surprised at the amazing opportunities that are opened up for them once they move into a community. So some of those wonderful opportunities are their educational, recreational events that are available to you. Theater, whether that's going to events with activities, theater, music, having live music at the events, or taking classes. So there's many opportunities there for you. And of course, it allows you to live a maintenance-free life. All of the housekeeping, all of those things you may, at the now, reaching out to many contractors to assist you with your inside your home as well as maintaining outside of your home. And our residents, once they come in, they are very, very happy to be free of all that maintenance work. We also have transportation to medical appointments. And you're going to love to be with like-minded people. That there's many different committees and resident groups, interest groups, so you can find other residents that have your interests, have your passions, have your hobbies. And so very easily socially to be connected with others in the community. And most important, you get to stay in control because you've made the decision that you know where your health care will be coming from, and you've made the most important decision for you. So Riverwoods today, I'll share with you that Riverwoods was started over 30 years ago by a small group of residents that wanted to improve the experience of aging for others. Mariana Hatch of Durham and Rosemary Coffin from Exeter, they both understood the importance of community and wanted to provide a community where seniors could be free from worrying about where their health care would come from. So over 30 years ago, Riverwoods Exeter began in 1994. And then the final dream was realized in November of 2019 when Riverwoods Durham opened up. Mariana Hatch was hoping that there'd be a community in Durham, and we were able to fulfill that dream 5.5 years ago. So, and I want to share with you that there are 3 communities: Riverwoods Exeter, Riverwoods Manchester, and Riverwoods Durham. We are sister communities, and we all share the same values. And we all have a volunteer board, the CCRC board. That board does focus on the operations of the communities. And then we have a supportive organization, the Riverwoods Group. The Riverwoods Group is focused on the mission of improving aging for seniors and focused on new ventures. So with the Riverwoods Group, there is also a system board. And again, that board's volunteer board, but it's focused on any at-risk projects or really the growth of Riverwoods. So with the parent organization, the Riverwoods Group, the 3 communities receive professional services from the Riverwoods Group, and those services are finance, quality, IT, human resources, and marketing. So it does allow the CCRC board to focus on the operations, and then the system board to focus on the growth of Riverwoods. But now I want to introduce you to Bill, our speaker today. We're very happy that Bill is willing to share with us his extensive knowledge in the real estate market. He's a very trusted resource for us. He's a full-time realtor with over 40 years of experience, and he provides service to local, state, and national levels there. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill now. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. So the question really comes down to this. How do you get to over 40 years of doing anything? And it's you got to start young. I was 21 years old when I started in the real estate business back in 1983. So you can do the math. That makes me 63 years old and still going strong in this business. I love it, and you have to love just about anything if you're going to stick with it for any period of time, especially a job like this. It's a lot of fun representing the clients. So today we're going to talk about the realtor organization and representation, what the market history looks like, because I think it's important for us to take a look back as we also look at where we are and where we might go. The current conditions, and we're going to have a bit of a conversation about what a buyer's market is versus a seller's market. I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's still a seller's market, as you probably know. We'll talk about home buying and the selling process, and leave some time for Q&A. And uh, I did a little math looking back to figure out when was the first time I was invited to come before this group. And my first year was 2017. So this makes my ninth consecutive presentation to all of you. And I appreciate being invited back. It's rewarding and I hope informative. So let's get right into it. The realtor organization, not every licensed real estate agent is a realtor. Realtors are members by choice of the National Association of Realtors, and there's a code of ethics that they must adhere to. And we will also talk about buyer agency and seller agency as that comes up. And there are disclosures now required by the state licensing boards that make sure that anytime a consumer is beginning the process, that the appropriate disclosures are covered so that people know who represents whom. Very important. Let's get right into what I think is one of the most important things for all of you, and that is that prices are continuing to rise. Last year, single-family homes reached a historic high in the state of New Hampshire, and it represented 13 straight years of increases in price. Last year, the median sales price was $514,000, statewide median. And you'll see at one point last year, the number, it was a month over month. So sometimes the month over month numbers can blip upward, but the long term was 514. But we were over 535 at one point. That doesn't mean that property values dropped $20,000. It just means that that particular month represented some really high price numbers that drove that number up. Home prices have doubled, or more than 154% increase since 2012. And I'm going to show you some inventory numbers that I think will give you some perspective and some context as we get into that a few slides from now. The first 2 months of this year we are still seeing increase in of 11%. So that's if those numbers hold true. I don't believe they will, but if they hold true, that's again another double-digit increase in pricing. Here's what that 2024 number looked like. You can see it in yellow highlighted at the bottom of your screen, but you can see by county, and then of course by median price, the percentage change from 2022 to 2023, and so forth. And if you look, Merrimack, Hillsborough, and Rockingham County started to show less than double-digit increases last year. And I believe that's because they also represent the highest price, median prices in the state. So when you take that into account, it seems like there is a point as prices increase where there'll be a bit of a slowing. Didn't mean that they retreated or stopped. It just meant that they were slower than some of the others. Take, for instance, Sullivan County, Coos County, Cheshire County. You can see they're still double-digit numbers. And yet, look at Coos. The median price in Coos is half of what it is for the state median. And so because that number's so low, you're going to find buyers out there that are saying, well, if I can't buy and be a half an hour from work, maybe I can be an hour from work. And they're willing to travel bigger distances for lesser prices. And that's why you still see double digits in some of these northern counties or western counties. Um, Moving on. This, I think, is one of the most important things, and I share it with our buyers and sellers in consultations with them as privately. And that is if you look at where the numbers are and where they came from. In 1998, which I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem that long ago to me. It seems like a little while ago, and yet we know that it's we're 27 years from there. The median price was $127,500, and then here's the climb in the early 2000s: 7.4%, 15%, 14.2, 15.1. These type of numbers are really over the long term. We can look back at it and say, how is that? How was that sustainable? And I know, being that we've all lived through it, you know where this is going to take us. Um, those numbers were double digit to the point where by the time we got through 2005, we were at 112% higher. And then 2006, a bit of a pause from 270 to 265, a little more of a correction in 2007, and then all bets are off. The financial crisis and the housing bubble, there you see it. So if you look at those numbers, 2008, 10%, 2009, 10%, 2000, you see the point is there was a little bit of a correction back in 2010, but also look at this. Let me take you back. Look at 98, 99. Look at the first column other than the year. Units sold. 14,000, 15,000, 15,000. You see the point. 17,000 in 2004. And when we move forward, the correction period, we see we're down to 2008. We're at 10,000 units. You see where we're going. A significant difference in units, even though prices were dropping. I say this to most consumers when we look back at these times and we think, how many of us would have liked to have bought every single house that was on the market back then? To the point where we bottomed out at 2012 at $202,000. Keep in mind, 270 was the peak. Okay, 270,000. Now we're in 2012, we're at 202. If you go down, you'll notice that peak. Let me take you back for just a second. 270 is 2005. And then the correction takes place. And if you look, when is the next time we get to 270? Sometime in 2018.
Wow.
13 years. That's what the financial crisis and housing bubble, that's what happened. But from 2012 forward, you've seen the 12%, 12 years of steady increases to the point where we are now at $514,000. I had a client of mine who bought a house in the late 1990s, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, when the market corrected, they're not going to be able to sell. Well, they weren't planning on it. It didn't matter to them. What matters to them is that they're planning to sell now, and they are so far ahead of the game because of the fact that the market, while it corrected because of the financial crisis, it's corrected back the other way to the point where the median prices are now at $514,000. I think it's important to see that from a contextual standpoint because back then, the market was all about demand, and there was plenty of inventory to meet that demand. Now we've got a shortage of inventory. We look at this; it's really all about that. We need only go back to our early high school days and think about supply and demand, and that was kind of if you understood those two things, you could get through basic economics. And it's really all about our inventory. Simple matter of supply and demand. Inventory had been high a decade ago. Much of that's gone, as you'll see today when we go at our we talk specifically in a couple slides about our inventory. Now it's really the lowest since we've been keeping records. Um, with decreasing inventory comes increased prices. Just how low? Just how low? Well, here you have it. Right now, if you look at the top part of our slide here, yes, if you look at the yellow, that's single families. The blue is condominiums. And yes, there's more properties available at the time this slide was created than last year and the year before. And same thing with condos. There's a little bit more inventory. But I really want to I want you to look at going back this bottom part of our slide here shows you that as close as 2010 and 11, we had almost 15,000 homes on the market. 15,000 single family homes. Now you might say, okay, what does that mean today? Well, in this slide here, you can see we're under 2,000. This morning, there were 1,148 single family homes available on the market. 1,148 single family houses. So here's what you're 9 out of 10 that used to be on the market are not on the market now. Even if you say, all right, what does that really mean? Prior to the pandemic, we were still looking at somewhere around 6,000 houses on the market. So, and that's 2020. So you could see that we don't have enough houses on the market, which is good news for folks that are looking to sell. Good news for those because if inventory is tight and you've got inventory, even if it's one, it's a much better situation for you today than it was even 10 years ago. So a buyer's market, well, we know this. Buyer's market is 2009, 10, 11, 12, plenty of inventory on the market. Buyers had more leverage. They had plenty to choose from also. So back then, someone could look at a home today and pretty much feel secure that they could think about it overnight, maybe even ponder it for a couple of days, take the weekend, and more likely than not, it was still available. And in a buyer's market, sellers were also willing to offer far more incentives. They were willing to pay closing costs. They were willing to wait longer periods of time. They were willing to wait for, in some cases, buyers to sell a home in order to buy their home. They were willing to be more flexible, I think is the better way to put it. In a market that is typically favoring the buyers, all of those things make sense. A seller's market, well, that's where we're at now, and that's where we've been really since 2016, 2017, because even with 6,000 homes on the market, there was still a low inventory market compared to 15,000. So low inventory, sellers have got the leverage. You are probably hearing this, and in talking with friends and family members, it's not uncommon to see multiple offers on the table, cash offers, buyers saying, we're going to just pay cash. You don't have to worry about us getting a mortgage. In some cases, buyers are waiving home inspections and willing to close on the property whenever you want to close as a property owner. You want to close in 30 days? We will. You want to close in 6 months? We will. And lots more flexibility, except this time the flexibility is the buyer's willing to be flexible and the seller's a little more rigid, just the opposite. And buyers are likely to offer over asking price. Here's what we've always found is the asking price is really nothing more than the starting price. It's the first offer into the marketplace by the seller. The seller's the one that makes the very first offer. Here it is. Here's what I want. and the buyer is the one to make the counteroffer. Well, that's the starting point. And in a seller's market, buyers are either likely to offer the listing price or more than. In some cases, we're still seeing less than because that if it's priced improperly, it can happen. But in a buyer's market, the sellers were starting and expecting that they were going to end up taking less than what they were asking. Now the shoe is sort of on the other foot. A balanced market is when neither the buyer or seller has leverage. It's really all about the inventory, and that's kind of this balanced market of 5 to 7 months worth of supply. Well, right now we're in about a month and a half round numbers worth of supply. So we're going to need somewhere around four times that in order to get to 7 months. And so you can see, again, we're talking somewhere around six to 7,000 listings in order to get there. Balanced market. Um, I don't see it coming anytime soon. And my experience over 43 years is that any market that seems to be the most quickly transitory is the balanced market. It's usually balanced on its way to shifting one way or the other because they don't last long. Balanced markets tend to be a transition from either a seller's market to a buyer's market or a buyer's market to a seller's market. The, we'll see if we ever get to a balanced market, if it we're able to be sustained. But I haven't seen one in 43 years that's lasted very long. Here's the month supply that I talked about. So you can see in 2009, uh, the yellow being single family homes, we were, over 15, both condos and single family, over 15 months worth of supply. 18 months. Can you imagine? That's on average. So you think about that. That's a lot of supply, plenty of supply. And now, well, we just told you it's a couple of months worth of supply. And so, good news for you that are considering possibly selling in a market like this because there's not enough supply, which means the buyers that want to buy are dealing with the supply that's out there. Now, you can't get a ramp up in prices like we've seen and a decrease in supply like we've seen and an increase in interest rates like we've seen without it affecting affordability. So to give you an idea, again, we are now running somewhere around, well, let me tell you what this means. Look at the bottom part of this slide and look at this graph. So middle of that graph, around 2012, 13, my view is obscured by my menu bar here for Zoom, but we were running somewhere between 250, this is condominiums, 250, almost 300%, meaning this. The median income earner in the state of New Hampshire was making 2.5 to 3 times what was necessary to afford the median condominium. So if you look at single families, the yellow graph, again, 2012, 2013, they were making twice as much as what was necessary to afford the median priced home. Now, the affordability graph here, you can see it steadily dropping as prices increased. Interest rates weren't moving very much, but in 2022, you could see that precipitous drop. That's when interest rates started to climb while prices continued to increase. It affects affordability. The only thing that we didn't talk about with regard to the affordability index is income. If incomes were to quadruple overnight, not likely, but if they were, this affordability index would get better because people were making more, even with interest rates the same and the home prices the same, affordability would be that much better because people were making more. But because prices were increasing at double-digit rates and then the mortgage rates increasing as well, without income drastically increasing modestly, but not enough to have any effect on the affordability index. So you can see what's taken place is we are now 2025, the median income earner in the state of New Hampshire is making 6/10 of what is necessary to afford the median priced home. So you've got two income earners, that come into play to basically afford a home today. And this number, this affordability index, is what is going to drive decisions going forward, in my opinion. Because if it gets lower than 50, you're going to see a slowdown in price increases and maybe even a stall. So that having been said, what's happening locally? Well, all real estate is much like what Tip O'Neill said with regard to politics. It's all local. Every bit of it is local. And so Hillsborough County, this gives you an idea of what the pricing looks like. But year to date, we are seeing, we're at $540,000 year to date for condos and 520,000. So you think, my goodness, why is that number so high? Excuse me, I said condos. I meant 2024 to 2025. Look at those numbers. We're at an 8.9% increase in February over last February. To me, that just tells me we are still in a heavy demand. The demand in Hillsborough County is still very strong. And we are listing, if you look at the top of your slide, the list price, the very bottom of those metrics, list price to sale price is still over 100%, which tells me, the demand is pretty strong where what we're listing for on average to what we're selling for is still over 100. It's down from where it was last year, which might lend itself, it's a little early to say, but might lend itself to this slowdown of which I potentially speak about. And again, it's a little too soon to tell, but our list price to sale price ratio is down a bit, but yet prices are still up. Going to Merrimack, same thing. You look at prices again, up over last year, 499 in February versus 455 for last February. Median sale price again, up over last year. I typically, what I've done here, rather than go through every county in the state, I use Hillsborough, Rockingham, and Merrimack County because that's kind of where the communities are, but it's also where it's the populated counties that I'm looking at. And I tend to look at these numbers because they sort of drive my decisions for me on what I'm going to present. Because I do a weekly radio show and I'm constantly looking at these numbers because it tells me where, as these three counties go, the state sort of goes. Rockingham, no surprise, leading the league in terms of median sale price. Seacoast communities are pulling those numbers up. $661,000 versus 610 last year. Again, an 8.4% increase. And if you look at the year-to-date numbers, when you take last year's first 2 months of the year versus this year's first 2 months of the year in Rockingham, you're up 14.5%. Hard to know if we're going to be able to sustain these numbers, as I said. Chief economist for the National Association of Realtors says it this way. Overall, I see home sales rising 9% this year and another 13% next year. Builders are going to continue to do well, but the price growth, I think, will be more muted. His prediction is that we're going to see mortgage rates somewhere in the low to mid sixes. We are not there yet, although I believe he's going to be accurate by the time the year concludes. It really comes down to this. Mortgage rates tend to be a function of a few things. Inflation, which really comes down to this. Job growth plays a big role. Employment and the cost of goods play a big role in terms of what the Fed is going to do. And they've chosen to stand pat here, which I think is the right move as they look to gather more data rather than raise rates or lower rates. I think we're in a holding pattern. My guess is we're going to see two moves this year. If I had to bank on it, we're gonna see two 25 basis point moves, meaning a quarter of a percent. More often than not, when the Fed funds rates are adjusted, the 10-year Treasury bill is affected by it, and mortgage rates tend to track similarly as the Treasury bills go up and down. Rates tend to go up and down with them. If you were to lay a graph month over month, they tend to have an effect on each other. Lastly, for those of you that are sellers, it's an advantage season. Prices are historically high, inventory is low. There's more multiple offer situations. You have the leverage in this market. The best time to sell, and then you see this question, spring. I think that answer is more complicated than that, and I think that's an easy answer because lots of people want to sell in the spring. I would say this: when do you want to sell? When do you want to sell? It really comes down to your position because even if the market were to move downward, if the market were to shift, I don't see shifts having a major increase overnight. And here's why I believe that. I look at the housing bubble, which was the worst correction I've seen in my history in the business, and probably my lifetime. I don't think there's been a real estate correction like that in the 63 plus years I've been alive. And none of it happened overnight. We had a 10% correction 2 years in a row, but those were the highest numbers. So even if you missed the mark and decided to sell at some other point, I don't believe you're going to, you have to catch a falling knife. I think what you really want to do is make your timing according to what works for you. And the best thing you can do is talk to a professional that says, all right, what's your timing look like ideally? Let's look at the market today and pretend you were going to put it on the market today. And then we can look in 6 months, we can look in 3 months as your timing becomes more realistic. We just revisit those numbers. That makes some sense. Bottom line, it is a hot seller's market, very hot. It still continues to be. I'll give you an idea. I told you there were 1,148 houses on the market this morning. And I do this. This is a morning ritual for me because I pick that. I look at also how many properties are in the city of Manchester because it's the largest city and I want to see. So this morning, now the city of Manchester is about 110,000 population. This morning, there were 23 single-family homes on the market. Not enough. That's across all price ranges. And so I do the amount of homes in the state. I pick Manchester, and then every morning I pick a different city or town other than those first two numbers I pull. This morning I picked Salem because I thought, well, okay, let me look at what Salem, New Hampshire is looking like. 6 single-family homes on the market this morning. 6 for Salem. Is there any demand in Salem? You betcha. If you were a buyer looking to buy in Salem, depending on your price range, you could probably look at the homes in your price range during your lunch break. So where I'm going with this is you're still in a very advantaged hot seller's market. How hot? This gives you an idea of the hotness index that we see. When we track these numbers, we look at this. This is reported to us we look at a couple things, Realtor.com and Zillow, and this is the hotness index. Manchester, New Hampshire, #1 in hotness index. So that's January of 2025. That was the most recent one that we could get. But look, just go down the list, okay? Concord, New Hampshire is #6. So Manchester, Nashua, Concord gives you a sense of, we're really, that's that 93 corridor, and it really extends to the east and west from there. But going down this list, there is a real preponderance of New England in there. There's a lot of popularity. You've got, New London and Norwich, Connecticut, Worcester, Providence and Rhode Island. You get my point. Springfield, Mass is tied at number 12. So again, we are in a really good hotbed of a market. And then for you, if you're getting ready to put your home on the market, and even if you're not getting ready, I'm gonna throw this out. There is a difference between readiness and preparedness. Because you might be ready to put your home on the market, but you're nowhere near possibly being prepared. And you may get yourself prepared and yet be not ready because something has to happen for you to be ready to put something on the market. But preparedness is something you can do well in advance. So I throw these things out there. Choose a realtor. Start to look at what your home value would be based on today, because it doesn't mean you're selling today. It just gives you a sense. Here's what the competition looks like. Here's what you would be competing with right now. Here's what they're asking. Here's some of the sold data. But I would caution all of you in an expanding market to rely too heavily on just sold data. And I use this example with seller clients one on one. If we were to only rely on sold data, I'd still be selling homes for $59,000, which was where the median price was when I started in 1983. Prices go up. And so sold data only tells you so much. You have to look at what you're competing against. I think it requires an inspection of the physical plant, meaning let's take a look around and see what might need to be done to maximize your value. We never make recommendations to people to spend money just to get the same money back. Why spend 10,000 to get 10,000 back? But it bears looking around and getting the advice of, all right, let's take a peek at what needs to be done, if anything. And then preparation of the property. Staging is a, a word that I think it sort of conjures up this idea in people's mind. Oh my God, I got to take all my furniture out of the house. I have to take all my pictures of my family off the walls. I've got to spend all kinds of money. That's not the case, and I'm not downplaying it. What I'm saying is if you look at if you go into new construction neighborhoods, there is a reason why builders have photographs of families that don't exist in the house on the walls. There's a reason why the house is made to look like people are living there, because it evokes a feeling. And so, really, property preparation needs to be that. It's more about cleaning things up, decluttering a little bit, but we don't tell people depersonalize. I don't believe that. And I also don't believe in spending all kinds of money on a property either. Oftentimes, we want to be at the front end of this conversation versus the back end. Because if we come in on the back end and we get sellers that say, I just replaced the heating system and I just did this, if they didn't need to do it and they were doing it because they thought it was going to be good to sell the house, they might be spending money that they didn't need to. So, these things are part of preparation in order to be ready when you're ready to execute. So, that's it for me. I'll take questions and then I pull this slide up because Therese, I think you may want to talk about that.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Bill. That was terrific. I think a lot of people tuning in today definitely are on the side of eventually being sellers. So you have great news with this market. It's just astounding the history and that it's still continuing. So we really appreciate you having a pulse and understanding what's going on with real estate. And at the end, I loved that the staging is not depersonalizing. That is great. I think a lot of people have that perception, but the important thing is evoking a feeling that's not clearing everything out. So great. So one thing, as everyone is thinking about their questions, please be putting your questions in the Q&A. I want to mention our next online workshop, and that is with Kathleen Toomey. It is called Purpose in Retirement, Making the Most of Your Next 8,000 Days. And if you don't know, the 8,000 equates to 22 years. So that is the average 22 years of retirement. Kathleen has a wonderful workshop for us. She is fantastic. And we're really excited to tune into that. So there's the QR code there. That event is going to be Thursday, April 30th, from 1 to 2. So we are going to turn over to your questions now. So Bill, the first question is, how easy is it to get cash, no contingency, no inspection offer if I have to move quickly, as is the case if they're going to go into Riverwoods?
Well, so first of all, there's a few variables there. It depends, number one, what your competition looks like, and also what the demand for the type of home you have is. For instance, if you've got $1 million property and you're in one of the southern New Hampshire towns, there's probably a pretty strong demand for that $1 million property. If you've got the same $1 million property in an in a western part of the state where there's not as much demand for that price point, it may take a little longer. So how do you speed that up? It depends on what homes like yours are selling for in that part of the state. So you have to kind of look, all right, if you've got a timeline that's effective, you go, I need to have this under agreement in 60 days. It really is going to come down to how much competition do you have and how much demand do you have. And you may need to keep a really sharp point on your price as opposed to saying, let's just throw a number out there, right? You're going to be much more focused on, I want to get as much as I can, but I'm not going on a fishing expedition either. So we take these on a case by case basis because to give you a general answer isn't doing you any favors there. Depends on where it is, how likely it is to have a home sale in 30 days to 60 days. We can kind of get a pretty good sense if you've got a home in a town or a community that there's a fair amount of properties like that have turned over in the last 30, 45, 60 days and get a sense of our demand.
Okay, great. Second question was the same. Thank you for that question. It is on people's minds if they are going to want to get that going in 60 days. So down to the question after that, with the long wait list to get into Riverwoods, how do we best plan when to sell our home?
Yeah. So I'll give you, for instance, we took a look at a property last year for a potential client or for who is now a client. We're just waiting. And so we're waiting as they're waiting. And we've done a lot of the groundwork. We've kind of got a sense. We gave them a sense last year what the pricing might look like. And of course, that makes no matter to where we're at today because it's obviously changed. But we got as much prepared as we could prior. Outdoor photographs, interior photographs, providing there weren't going to be a lot of changes. So it really comes down to we did all of our paperwork on the back end. We did our research to make sure we had plot maps or survey maps. We've got all of our marketing material ready to go so that if they were to get the call from Riverwoods that says, hey, you're next in line, we could have that property ready for market in a matter of days. We wouldn't have to go through weeks of getting things ready. We've already done the preparation. So I hope that answers the question. I think it really comes down to there's no, it's never a bad time to have the conversation about preparation, even if you think it might be a year or two, or your timeline could be even longer than that. You might say, I don't know if I'm really quite ready for any of this for 3 or 4 years. We've sort of put things on mothballs, as it were. I feel safe to be able to use the term on mothballs with this group and my age group because we know what it means. But we can wait years to get ready to put something on the market. We had one client who we had interior photographs and exterior photographs done. And by the time we were ready to put it on the market, they'd removed wallpaper and changed paint colors. We just went in and took new photos. So it can be, we can be ready pretty quickly.
Great. Yeah, your talk about preparedness is invaluable. That is terrific. The next question, most realtor companies have multiple salespeople. What do you recommend as a best method of finding a broker agent for our specific sales opportunity?
Boy. All right. So let me answer that question the best way I can. If you know somebody that you've worked with and you like them and you trust them, and you feel confident in their capabilities to be able to represent you this time, hire them. If you're not sure of their capabilities this time around, or you had a less than stellar experience, then call a handful. Listen, it would seem self-serving to say call me, but I'd like to apply for the job. But I really think you ought to talk to a couple people, get a sense of who you think is going to do the work for you. Now, there's a wide range of offerings out there. And what I mean by that is there's solo practitioners who it's just them. And they can represent you very well if there are many professionals I know that are solo practitioners. And then there are folks that run an office team like I do. My wife and I have a team of people that work with us. And we have payroll also. We have staff. We have administrative people that do all the marketing, all of the management of the transaction. And we have a very streamlined operation. Both of those things work, and anything in the middle will work. I really think what it comes down to ultimately is this. When you sit down with somebody who's either running a team or you sit down with an agent, you've got to think of it this way. If you were going to replace the roof on your house, Therese,
Mhm.
okay? And I said, "Oh, who did you end up choosing?" And you said, "We choose the Midnight Roofing." I really don't trust them, but they had the right price. See how those don't go together?
Mhm.
I, I think you've got to you might say they weren't the best price, but I really trusted them, or some derivative thereof. It always comes down to, I think, trust, and yes, you can trust somebody, but they also have to have the business acumen as well. I think you've got to feel like they can represent you and achieve what you're looking to achieve. So I think they go hand in hand, but without the trust, then none of it matters.
Great advice. That's great advice. Next question. What's important to evaluating the purchase of a property with good resale value?
Well, as a buyer, it's kind of the one thing. There are a couple things you can control as a buyer, um, and I look at it this way: as a seller, what are the things you control? You can control the price, you can control the condition, the marketing to some extent in the agent that you hire. Uh, but buyers take into consideration price, terms, condition, and location. The seller can't control the location. They can only control it when they buy it. So this idea when sellers say, if we can only move our house into that was your choice when you bought it. And so ultimately, when a buyer looks to make a decision, I think first and foremost, this old saw that I've heard for 43 years of location, 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 rings itself true. And so I believe if you're going to, if you can control anything, it's the location of a property as a buyer. And ultimately, affordability as a buyer comes into play because you might say, well, if I could pick any location, I'd pick right on the ocean. Well, you can control that, but how's your budget? And so you got to take into account all of those things. But ultimately, if you can pick location first and be driven by that, that should be your first choice. You got to factor in pricing and then ultimately livability. Because if you're moving and you have certain needs for the type of house you're going to live in, location and price might be right, but if it's not livable for your standards, then you got to factor that in as well. Oftentimes, it's a balance of all of those things. We've worked with some buyer clients who they're very firm on their location in terms of a town that they want to be in, but because pricing is such that they start to realize they're kind of priced out of that town, they they start to they start to be open to other towns that might be similar so it really is if you're looking to buy and execute on a good choice, location's always primary for me.
Okay, great. With recent litigation, realtor fees were expected to come down, but generally that doesn't seem to be happening. Why not? And do you expect that to change?
Well, so that's a really good question. The real estate settlement really came down to this. It was a decoupling of the listing company was charging um, what I would call an umbrella fee. They were saying, all right, I'm going to charge a total of X, and I'm going to give a portion of X to the buyer agent. So I was going to take my fee and a portion of it, in some cases, 40, 50%. Keep in mind, that's a generalization, but they were giving, in some cases, 40 to 50% of the total fee to the buyer client, I mean, the buyer agent, to produce a buyer to buy the house. They were splitting the fee in some form or fashion. So the settlement now requires that that doesn't happen, that it can't, MLS can no longer be used to uh, to publish what a buyer agent fee might be. So that vehicle that had been used for essentially 40 years was no longer allowed. And so the buyer agent fees were expected that they might go down because there was no standard publishing of a number out there. The argument was this: even if it wasn't the same fee in every case, they were so close to what was being offered to each other that it seemed to be a standardization based on publication. If I know what X company is publishing and Y company is publishing and Z company is publishing, then maybe I'll publish something similar. And then the buyer agent fees seem to be the argument anyway, is that they would be standardized in some way, which is not allowed. It's a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. So I think what we're seeing here is this decoupling of fees for the first time in 40-ish years. This now comes down to a value discussion as opposed to a blanket, here's what I charge and here's what I get, here's what you'll get for it. It now is really, here's exactly what our fee is on the listing side, and here's what if any fee you're going to offer on the buyer side if you choose to offer anything at all. Somewhere along the line in this market, it seems like the things are bearing themselves out to where not much has changed yet. Whether it will or not, I'm very interested to see myself. I haven't seen much change on a personal level, but we're not even a year into this settlement. So I think it's going to require some time for this to all sugar out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there services um, that evaluate a home for potential sale other than a realtor?
Sure. Oh, you wanted more than that?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. So keep in mind, there are many there are what we call automated valuation models. So a really great example of an automated valuation model is your assessed value. And
Mhm.
yet, many of us, if we had to rely upon our assessed value, might say, "There's no way I'm selling my home for that," because you either believe that it's way too little or that it's way too high. In most cases, way too little, it seems. But that's an automated valuation model because in some cases the assessor hasn't been in the house in decades, and they're using automation to kind of come up with a value. Yes, in some cases they've had to make personal visits, and when there's reevaluations, in some cases there's personal visits, but not always. And listen, not always are property owners allowing the assessors in to see the property. So they rely upon these AVMs, automated valuation models. That's one. Um, Realtor.com, Zillow, they have automated valuation models. They're basing, keep in mind, they're basing some of this automation on recent sales data. Now, you already know what my opinion is, recent sales data. They take into account assessed valuation. And so, again, if the assessed valuation is really accurate, maybe that's a good thing. If it's not, I think it's a bad thing. Um, what they don't know, the automated valuation models can't tell any of us what improvements have been done to the house inside unless you're doing it. You're somehow making modifications in these AVMs. They can't tell me how your house smells. Um, so there's a lot of what an AVM might tell you, and most of them give you a range. And I got to be honest, if I were to give you the same range that some of these AVMs gave you, for instance, let's say your house was worth 550, and I came in, Teresa, and I said your house is worth 450 to 600. You'd say, Bill, I could probably do that on my own. You get a $150,000 price band. That's not very accurate. So
Mhm.
ultimately, I think you can get a sense. And if you say, well, I don't know if I'm ready to have somebody come through, you can always call us or call somebody and say, all right, let's try to talk our way through this and see if we can give you a better sense than what your tax assessment says or than what Realtor.com or Zillow says.
Mhm.
Let's try to drill down a little better. So there are models out there, and I listen. Sometimes you can hit the bullseye, but very often than not, I think the best way to get a real good sense of your value is to have somebody walk through that's in the trenches day to day, involved in working in the market.
Yeah, that's terrific advice. Thank you, Bill. So I know we are up on the hour at 2 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of your time. Is it okay if we do one more question?
Yeah, and if anybody wants to text me, Therese, or call me, I can give my phone number, if you'd like.
Thank you, Bill. That's very helpful because we do have maybe we do have a number of more questions that we're not able to get to, but I appreciate you offering that. Um, I think people will find that very valuable to get their specific question answered.
Well,
Um,
let me give that, and you can text or
so
or call. I mean, if a text is easier, and then you want to have a conversation later, if we don't get your question answered, we can always do that. My number's 603-661 7818. Again, that's 603-661-7818.
great.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
what was the other question? I'd be happy to answer
The
that.
last question we will do is, should a seller price aggressively to maximize sale price or price conservatively to hopefully generate competing offers?
So I believe this is in this current market, it's it's close to impossible to underprice a property. And I'm not a proponent of underpricing necessarily, but what I mean by that is there's so many multiple offer situations with people buying well over, offering well over list price. We usually get to where market value truly is because what's the idea of market value? If you ask $600,000 for your house, and you have multiple offers and all of them are at 600,000, well, you'd say, okay, I guess market value is 600. That's what somebody's willing to pay for it. But if you get 650, then one could argue, well, I guess I priced it um, sort of aggressively or conservative. Your definition of the word aggressive or conservative comes down to how you think about it. But aggressive might be I priced it really close to where I think it's worth, not over and above. And here we are getting an offer for 650. That tells me where's market value? It's at 650. That's where it closed. So
Mhm.
again, this really comes down to the current market conditions, and we are still seeing plenty of multiple offer situations out there, plenty. Um, if you start to break with competition and you're over and above, you're going to reduce that chance. But it is a case by the one thing I came to realize about real estate early on in my career was they are um, they are so specific. I could sell the same home in a brand new subdivision, yet one was across the street from the other. They're both identical. The houses built by the same builder, except one got morning sun in the kitchen and one got morning sun in the living room, and one was worth more to the buyers than the other. So identical houses sometimes have a little bit more specificity. So I think we got to take it case by case. But you're in a market where there's a very real opportunity to get over list price.
Great. And I'm going to ask you one more thing. Can you let everyone know where they may be able to find similar information? Someone is from Vermont and they're interested in finding the similar data.
Uh, Vermont Association of Realtors. Let me just see if I can pull that up. I
Okay,
can
thank
give you
you.
the CEO's number of the Vermont Association. She is an executive, not necessarily a realtor, but if you call the association, um, they should be able to give you just bear with me 1 second.
Sure.
The chief executive officer for Vermont, here it is. Okay, Vermont, is Kathy Sweeten, Sweet, like sweet, followed by En, Kathy Sweeten.
Mhm.
And the number at the Vermont Realtors is 802-578-8258.
Great.
And you could certainly start there. And they could put you in touch with their maybe director of, I don't know if they have a director of communications or somebody that would put you in touch with, pulling these kind of numbers. I'm not licensed in Vermont, or else I could get it, probably pull something together for you. But again, that's where I would start.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Bill, we've had a number of people in the Q&A thank you and say that this was very valuable. We really appreciate your time and your wealth of knowledge. Everything still looks very, very good on the market. So that is great news. And thank you. Thank all of you for spending this hour with us to learn about the real estate market. And I want to mention again the next workshop. Hopefully you'll join us Thursday, April 30th at 1 o'clock. All right. Thank you again, Bill.
My pleasure. My
All
absolute
right.
pleasure.
Okay. Take care.